By now, I'm sure many of you have noticed the pictures hanging on the wall behind me. They are, of course, images of two of the many treasures that fill our spiritual home at Alma Rd. Pictures that I've brought home in recent weeks to help me stay connected with our congregation and our community during these difficult days of isolation. These beautiful photos were taken by our past president, Joe Lewitt, as part of an exhibition we held in honor of our 85th anniversary in 2015. And they tell in part the remarkable story of our congregation. The image over my left shoulder is a rare glimpse inside the Baghdadi scroll that sits in the center of our ark. As you can see when you look closely at the image, the silver case is in fact painted timber, decorated with pressed tin and a few simple stones. The simplicity of its utilitarian design tells the story of its humble origins as the prized possession of a working class community living, we imagine, on the outskirts of Baghdad about 150 years ago. The image over my right shoulder is equally beautiful, but it tells a different story. It is a tall and slender scroll filled with the most incredible scribal art. Those lucky enough to get a rare glimpse inside the scroll would note that many of its words and its letters are adorned with clowns and florets, not only singling the talent of the sofer, the scribe that created it, but also demonstrating the wealth and affluence of the community that commissioned it. The Bavarian scroll, as I refer to it, was, as many of you know, a prized possession of the Lindenstrasse synagogue in Berlin and was sent to us for safekeeping in 1938. These two scrolls and the communities they represent could not be more different. One scroll is quintessentially Sephardi in its form and presentation, while the other stands as a testament to the pinnacle of Ashkenazi's creativity and accomplishment. Yet these two scrolls come to tell the same tragic story. The story of hatred, bigotry, and persecution that has haunted our people for more than 2 millennia. Perhaps more than any other objects in our synagogue, these two scrolls serve as both a symbol and a reminder of what our world is capable of. They tell of how once great congregations and the communities they represented were destroyed for no other reason than they fostered and sustained Jewish life. The Lindenstrasse synagogue was gutted on the 9th of November in 1938, in that horrific night of broken glass we know as Kristallnacht, 6 short months after the scrolls were sent to us for safekeeping. We know less of the story of the Baghdadi scroll, save to say that it was most likely smuggled into Israel in the years following the Fahud, that bloodthirsty pogrom in the summer of 1941 that ended 27 centuries of peaceful Jewish life in the lands between the Tigris and the Euphrates. Today is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Teruah, the day of the sounding of the shofar. The Hebrew word teruah comes from the verb patria, which means to warn. And the traditional role of the shofar in ancient Israel was to warn the people of danger. In reminding you today of the story of these remarkable scrolls, I regret I am also standing here, shofar in hand, warning that the abhorrence that they represent is not just a story of the past, but painfully continues to be the story of our present. My friends, there is little doubt that the societal cancer that is anti-Semitism is back in our consciousness. But there is also little question that it never went away. We don't live in an era of renewed anti-Semitism. Rather, we live in an era when it's more visible, more present, and more reported. Anti-Semitism has never gone away, not even in this lucky country. That's why it's called the oldest hatred. But what has changed are the ways in which anti-Semitism manifests. Early on, the criticism of Jews was ideological. Jews did not accept Jesus and were persecuted for it. We resisted converting to Islam at times of Muhammad, and though we were a tolerated minority in Muslim tradition, we were relegated to second-class citizens in many of the lands in which we settled. Soon the hatred turned from speaking about what Jews believed to what Jews did. Jews were persecuted for killing Jesus. During the medieval era, blood libels arose, claiming falsely that Jewish children that Jews killed children to put their blood into matzah, or reconstituted Jesus from the host bread in order to torture him. In this era and subsequently, Jews became a symbol for everything that people did not like. That's why people could call disparagingly us socialists and capitalists in different eras in history. Judaism does not change. Judaism has not changed, but people's fears and stigmas do. Socialists hated capitalists, and thus Jews were called capitalists. Capitalists hated socialists. So Jews took on that label. Eventually, Jew hatred turned officially into anti-Semitism in the 19th century, when it became tied with the racial theories of the era. During this time, the problem was no longer what we believed or what we were accused of doing. Instead, anti-Semitism became about who we were. Being an anti-Semite became a political badge of honor for those who sought our destruction. As German propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels proudly remarked on Kristallnacht, the German people is an anti-Semitic people. It has no desire to have its rights restricted or provoked in the future by parasites of the Jewish race. As Jews moved through each age of history, the anti-Semitism we faced did not go away. Instead, it stuck around so that today's anti-Semitism is not particularly different from anything we've seen in our past. Indeed, as I see it, today's anti-Semitism manifests itself in at least 4 main forms, each of which need to be understood and responded to in their own ways. We all feel acutely the first form of anti-Semitism, which is also the easiest to grasp. We live in a world of uncovered white supremacy. The belief that the so-called racially pure white people are superior to everyone else. This is uncovered because it's always there. But in the past few years, these forces of hatred and bigotry feel comfortable enough to spread their vitriol in the public forum. They are the Antipodean resistance we see marching in St. Kilda, the weekend warriors in the Grampians, and the bigots we've seen on the news in recent weeks. They are the source of the swastikas painted on playground equipment, the stickers dotted around our city, and the slurs etched and painted on synagogue walls. The second kind of anti-Semitism that we grapple with today is that which comes from the far left. Though the anti-Semitism of white supremacy and the anti-Semitism of the far left share the same designation, they manifest in totally different ways. For those on university campuses and in leftist circles, Anti-Semitism most often appears through the lens of anti-Israel and anti-Zionist rhetoric. Yet it's built upon the same basic themes that have echoed throughout time. Namely that Jews have hidden power and influence that they do not deserve. That a Jewish person's right to tell their historical story matters less than that of other minorities. That others have more right to determine if Jews are a religion, an ethnic group, or a nation more than Jews do themselves. And that they have the right to hold the entire Jewish community responsible for the acts of a subgroup of Jews. The third way that anti-Semitism manifests is often something that we as progressive Jews don't talk about. We are living through a spate of some of the worst violence against Orthodox Jews in our country's history. Jews who look or practice Judaism more overtly than many of us are the proverbial canary in the anti-Semitic coal mine. Anti-Semitism anywhere breeds anti-Semitism everywhere. Though these communities and their illegal prayer gatherings and engagement parties may feel a world away, they are not. When they are singled out by the media and government in a disproportionate way, and we say nothing, we allow these officials to become practiced in speaking and acting this way, laying the groundwork for a culture where it becomes acceptable to deride members of the Jewish community for no other reason than they are Jewish. The fourth and final form of anti-Semitism that I see in our country is perhaps best characterized by the witty retort of satirist Franklin Foer, who recently wrote that philo-Semites are just anti-Semites who like Jews. In a way, I would take these anti-Semitic attitudes over white supremacy, hostility on our university campuses, and violence towards the ultra-Orthodox any day. But they are still insidious. The problem is not that these people love us for our perceived skill with money or power or loyalty to Israel. The issue is the more we are loved for these things, the more they will appear to be true. And thus the more fodder those who truly hate Jewish people will have to claim their views as mainstream and right. So the question for us on this new year is, what can we do about it? What can we do about anti-Semitism? In essence, our approach to each of these subcategories must be distinct, but they all have things in common. And as such, each form of anti-Semitism needs to be responded to in the same way, by building genuine and positive relationships, by speaking truth in the face of lies, and by doubling down on our own identity and Jewish pride. As history has taught us, positive relationships matter far more than we often appreciate. But we need to know which ones to foster. Unlike some of the other categories of anti-Semitism, it won't work to try and build bridges with white supremacists. Instead, we need to build bridges with other faith communities and with law enforcement and with civil institutions. Relationships are a means to fostering understanding. When public servants or elected officials speak out, as we've seen in recent weeks, we need to leverage our relationship with them to educate them that this language will not be tolerated. Likewise, when our allies praise us and simultaneously offend us, playing into the tropes of dual loyalty and Jewish power, we need to pull them aside. Explaining the danger of their statements is much more helpful than issuing a press release. Historically, the teacher has always been better at changing hearts than the prophet. Yet as much as relationships matter, so does the truth. Whether in the public square or on the university campuses, shutting down discourse has never been the answer. Stopping inflammatory speakers only emboldens them more. Instead, we must fight ignorance with knowledge. If anti-Semitism is indeed elastic, our goal should not be to change the hearts and the minds of the 2 to 5% of people who already have fully formed anti-Semitic pictures of Jews in their heads. Rather, we need to educate the 30% who are in the process of moving there. The number of white supremacists is small. We need to show the large group who are within shouting distance of them that they shouldn't listen. Part of being able to speak the truth is also having access to the history and the language to talk about anti-Semitism, Israel, and other issues that may arise. There have been a number of wonderful books that have been published in the past few years by Deborah Lichtitz, by Barry Weiss and Phyllis Goldstein that can help us to educate friends and allies about the nuances of the world's oldest hatred. I hope to have many of these conversations here in synagogue and to give you, our members and friends, the tools to do this, including offering a 4-part course later in the year. We'll explore each of these forms of anti-Semitism and learn from experts as how to best respond to them. I also hope to encourage you to be an ally as we look at the education your children and grandchildren are getting. If they go to a Jewish day school, do they participate in programs like building bridges that promote mutual understanding and respect across cultural and religious communities? If they don't go to a Jewish day school, does their school participate in ADC's Click Against Hate program, which teaches children in primary and secondary schools how to tackle issues of racism, hatred, and defamation? We need to ask the questions. We need to know, how is the Holocaust taught in our schools? How is Israel presented? What is the narrative that surrounds Easter and Christmas when it's taught in an early childhood setting? Attitudes start young. So we need to make an impact by addressing these questions early. But as important as building relationships and seeking truth are, the most important thing we can do in the face of anti-Semitism is to double down on ourselves, to not give up on ourselves, and to be as proud as we possibly can about our Jewish history, heritage, and practice. In the face of anti-Semitism, we might do one of two things. Out of fear, we might sacrifice our Jewishness to fit in. Or we might embrace our Jewishness, yet pull away from things that we're passionate about because we face anti-Semitism there. The key is to not let anti-Semitism define you. People hate that which is elusive, that which they do not understand. They are more open. The more open we are with our Judaism, the more defiantly we laugh in the face of those who seek to undermine us. Showing up to pray, to learn, to gather is a good first step. Being comfortable and confident enough to share it with your friends and colleagues by tagging yourself present on social media is the next step. Engaging in social justice work through Nourish and Project Dignity as a proud Jew, even if it might mean unfairly having to answer for every action of the Israeli government. It's an act of self-defiance. The more we are unapologetically and defiantly Jewish, the more non-Jewish people in our orbit will see the nuances and joys of being Jewish, and the less they'll be able to characterize us as other. People should know that their neighbor, their customer, their friend is Jewish. For if they do, it will bring into focus the personal cost of ignoring anti-Semitism. One of the most important things to know in the face of anti-Semitism is that we have agency. We are not hopeless and helpless. We own that power and what we do with it. And hopefully it will bring us closer to creating a future that is different from the past that hangs on the walls behind me. What will distinguish us from the communities that we remember through these images? While I am rabbi of this congregation, it will be this. We will never allow ourselves to believe that it could not happen here, that it could not happen to us. The shofar is about to be sounded. Danger looms once more on the horizon. And my prayer on this Yom Teruah is that we not only hear the alarm that is ringing out around us, but that we as individuals, as families, and as community find strength, courage, and confidence to respond to it this new year. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May that be God's will.